talk about this, which is me trying to be a little bit provocative in that, but I'm from a company called Jaunt, and we are producing cars, EVs called rental. And we're right at the beginning of our journey. And so I wanted to talk a little bit, I can't talk about what we've done, I'd love to be able to do that, and hopefully next year I can, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the ideas and the ethos and how we're going about thinking about this, because it is a little bit of a different process, and we come at this thinking about, we want Australians who, for the most part, have never driven an EV to be able to jump in and have a great time. And that, as automotive technology has developed and become more complex, and people have produced more and more complex cars to fill out a brochure and create value for ownership, you want all those features. But if you're getting in a car for the first time and you're maybe only using it once ever, you really need to be thinking of that in a different way. So we put a lot of effort into thinking about who Australians are, who we are, how we drive, where we drive, how we need to build a vehicle that kind of suits that environment. And so it's going to go through a little bit of the kind of thought process that's led to this, and a lot of the experience that we bring. Because at Jaunt, my founder and I, co-founder of our team, we're not from an automotive background. We've worked in automotive in communications, in advertising, and in software, but we're not mechanical engineers. We're working with them now, but it's making sure that we're producing something that is really touching on the desirability of automotive, and that's a huge part of it. We buy cars because there is an emotional connection, and there's an emotional connection to the things that we do with cars. So trying to figure out how to do that in an Australian context is sort of what I'm talking about today. And so a big thing that I've worked in mostly digital and service design for 20 years, and more seeing a shift, and you've all experienced it, that it's not just the physical product or the brand or whatever it is that defines the offering. So an example that we've used before is that, say, Jetstar, for example, an airline, they sell tickets on a plane, that's their real product, but you as a customer are experiencing that, your booking, your check-in, all of those things are integral to it. And that's important because often you'll ask people, how was the flight? And they'll be like, well, it was terrible because I couldn't check in online. And that's a valid experience and a valid problem, but it's obviously separate to the flying of the plane, which went fine. So making sure that we are thinking about that transition between digital and the physical world, which is very, very important when we're designing a rental vehicle, and it's very important when we're designing what can be an intimidating vehicle, which is an EV for most people. And so some quick examples of that is thinking about products and services that have really succeeded. And Uber has been used as an example in too many presentations, but it's still relevant because fundamentally they didn't change the experience of transport. It was still a car, a driver picking you up in a car owned by them, which is half the taxis in Melbourne were anyway. But the experience of that, of booking on an app, the car comes to you, and particularly the transactional nature of that in the end. So that I was always frustrated running late to a meeting, and you get a cab takes you somewhere, and then their receipt prints, you need a receipt to claim it for work, and it comes out second. And these are small things, but all those little things add up to someone like Uber to come in and just have an app where you press one button, essentially, book the car to me now, and it all happens magically in the background, and it's reliable and it works. The experience of being in the car maybe was a little bit better and nicer and you got 3 minutes, but fundamentally it was that software experience that made the physical experience valuable and made it such a huge company. And it's another transport problem is Mikey. And I worked for an agency that was helping out way before it was called Mikey, when it was just starting out and they were thinking of implementing this. And we were in one of the first meetings, in the early 2000s, and we were like, okay, cool, explain to us how this works. And they're like, oh yeah, so people will have the card, and then they'll get on the tram and they'll tap on, and then when they get to their destination, they'll leave the tram and they'll tap off. And we were like, but I wouldn't tap off. Why will people tap off? And they're like, well, they'll just tap off because that's the best thing for them to do. And it was just like, have you taken public transport and it's crowded, and it's just not going to work. And then, so there was a recognisable fundamental sort of problem that they weren't accommodating for. Just normal human behaviour wasn't really thought about even in that early stages, and we're still struggling with that. You can't recharge on a tram, it's hard to top up a MyKey, all of these kinds of things that have come from that initial misunderstanding about human behaviour. And so trying not to make those kinds of mistakes. And maybe those are easy to see in hindsight, but still there's lessons to be learned. The big thing too for us, we hope, and the reason we're all here at the EV Expo today, because I think that for a long time EVs in Australia have been a novelty, and they've been this strange thing that for most people haven't experienced. Maybe they're a bit difficult to use. It's an interesting thing and something that everyone would like to have go of, but it hasn't really kicked over into innovation. And innovation definition being that it really is useful and it becomes really a permanent part of society, transport and everything like that. So we hope that we're at a point where everyone here, all the major brands, have built sort of EVs up to a point where it feels like there's a lot more public acceptance. So timing, people are ready and people are wanting to experience these things because they see it as something other than a novelty. They see it as luxury and performance and all these other great things that come with it. And this is, I think, been a big thing that we've been thinking about, and where maybe we can jump in is that there's been hundreds of thousands of false starts with EVs around the world. And some of those have been because maybe it's the oil industry coming in, maybe it's products that weren't quite right, but obviously finding something that fits in that beautiful little middle of that Venn diagram where we can actually make something that's super desirable for most people, that is viable and it's feasible. And all those things have been challenges in the past, whether it's cost of batteries, cost of conversions, the usability of the product, have all been challenging, and hopefully we're getting to a point now where we can, and obviously mass auto manufacturers have done it, and I think this is really the tipping point in Australia, and we hope in what we're doing that it's the tipping point as well in terms of more bespoke EV conversions. And I'm just going to throw some funny pictures in here because I think these are examples of when there's been great ideas but they haven't quite worked, and you can try as hard as you want to make that car cool, and there's been many other events in a similar vein that just haven't worked, maybe in timing, maybe in product. I mean, that's quirky and fun, but it's just not quite right, and maybe again it's easy to see in hindsight. But there's other reasons as well, more valid reasons around it. Transport is a very complex and personal thing, and certain products and services that work in one environment don't necessarily work in others. And one example of that is GoGet, FlexiCar, and CarShare. And I'm a user of these services and have been for years. And they're fantastic for tasks in the city. And that's obviously where they're based, is what they're designed for. But a couple of challenges that we see is that they're not products that are necessarily, they have to be affordable, simple vehicles. And that inherently makes them not the most desirable vehicles. And part of using cars is going on a road trip and having that emotional connection. The other thing is, of course, that it's very difficult for them to operate outside of major capital cities where they can have service and supporting infrastructure. And then you might look at something like Tesla, which I think is always an interesting example, and obviously dominates in the space, but from a messaging point of view, is always talking about luxury and performance, and very rarely about efficiency or other things that many other EV products have gone in and talked about and really led with. And I think that's kind of we've got to the point where we can talk about the benefits of these products, not the features, because most people don't understand the technical features, that we should be leading with what the benefits are to everyone who's going to use it. And I think there's some wonderful things out there, and I think the guys at SEA are doing wonderful things. I mean, I think there's a startup in the UK whose name I forget now, but they're supplying EV vans for Royal Mail and a few places in the States. But I think making these, even if you're a fleet manager who's buying these things, you're still a person, you're still wanting to be excited about these, and I think these are cool. And so building something that's a little bit different and a little bit more exciting also helps fit you into that Venn diagram of desirability. And so thinking about all that, kind of how that all fits and how that can be worked into something that we're building and building for Australia, which is quite a unique market in a lot of ways, and unique in the world, really. That we're obviously building, Jaunt is building four-wheel drives and electric four-wheel drives to explore the countryside. But we think that's not just because we love it, we think that's just something that is part of Australian culture in a lot of ways. And it's very interesting to think about and look into how car sharing, any kind of transport sharing projects, startups, failures, successes have worked in Australia, and how that is impacted by our psychology. There's a bunch of studies done around why things like O-bikes, for example, had a horrible time in Melbourne, and for a number of reasons that may be to do with the product. They weren't a great bike to ride if you ever rode one of those yellow bikes. But it may also be around the way that Australians are. There's a study called the Austin Cultural Model, and that rates countries and cultures based on 5 categories. And one of the interesting things they did was compare Singapore to Australia, which are quite different countries and quite different cultures, and have quite different rates of success with different shared transport models. And there's things like power, interesting names, but power distance is basically almost respect for authority. These are the rules, and people follow them. And you can see that things like in Australia, we don't have that. We will just break the rules if we can. We have high individuality, we have high indulgence, and a really short-term thinking. And there's ones over that side where it's kind of like there's a high factor of thinking. O-bike's problem was, and share economy in Australia has suffered by the fact that you get off your O-bike and you leave it there, and it's someone else's problem. Whereas other cultures, it may be more thinking about the longer-term community benefit of these things. None of these are right or wrong; they're just differences in culture. And that's a difficult thing. And what's always interesting I find about Australia is high individualism, so wanting to be unique, and yet high uncertainty avoidance. So a real almost fear of change unless other people are doing it and unless it kind of becomes common practice. And that's been a real barrier for the whole EV industry in Australia. And you think about the people that it's really easy to make excuses about why you don't want to change. So it's just an interesting climate to kind of, maybe it's a wrong climate to bring any kind of car sharing in. But I think if we can tweak the desirability, we can maybe get closer to making something like this work. And car rental here in Australia, and car rental defined as car share as well, anything where you don't have a driver, is $1 billion industry. It's pretty huge. It's really quite an interesting thing because there's no regulation, and that's one of the biggest problems and frustrations of us as normal people renting cars, is you get that $39 a day deal, but by the time you leave the counter at the airport, it's $100 kind of thing. There's no pricing regulation like there is with airlines. There's a very fragmented market, which is really interesting as a startup coming into it. But there's a huge international customer base, there's a huge tourism base, and even though we all own cars, we also, most of us, end up renting cars because it's a huge country and we fly all over the place. And car share within that is about $100 million, $125 million, so it's growing exponentially and sort of doubling year on year, whereas car rental, traditional car rental, is more staying flat. We did a bunch of research with just to a wider general public audience around, without mentioning Jaunt and who we are to try and reduce the bias, around what people wanted out of car rental and what they thought the problems were. What would they change if they could? And of course, as you can imagine, clear upfront pricing is the number one thing that people really wanting out of this. But what made us very happy was that those two things of hybrid or electric cars or better cars was also really high. And there's this thing where people travel to California and they'll rent a Mustang because it's cool and it's fun and it's part of the experience. You just don't really have that option in Australia very much. There's a few boutique operators, but overall it's not really done. And yet people are actually wanting to use that opportunity to drive a car that they've never driven before because it's not that full-on commitment of buying. And so hybrid and electric cars, people are wanting to drive something different, something more efficient when they go on holidays and when they've got that choice. But they don't necessarily have the opportunity. which is great, because that's what we're looking to do. And I always think that this is a really interesting, Jeff Bezos, obviously Amazon's quite successful, but when asked, hey, there's so many ingenuity was done, it's like, oh, what's going to change in the next few years, what are we going to invest in, what are we going to do? And he was like, well, don't look at that, look at what's not going to change. And I think that's important because it's when you're thinking about Australian culture and behaviour of tourists in Australia as well, what is the commonality? What is our culture? What are people coming here for to experience? And what is the psychology that's been built up over 100 years of automotive heritage that won't change? And I always think that Australian car sales are very, very surprising. And most people, even within the auto industry, are surprised often by this because the domination of car sales, and I've intentionally left this blank, because this is what 14, 15 cars, top 14, 15 cars. It is amazing how dominated this is by 4x4s, by utes, by SUVs. So that's last month's sales, and it basically highlights Triton, Ranger. The death of large sedans has transitioned into buying 4x4s, buying SUVs, and maybe this is marketers being really effective at getting everyone to buy more expensive cars, but it's also part, I think, of Australian culture. Maybe I'm being tricked by marketing as well, but the idea of having a car that you can do that big family road trip, that you can go camping in, that suits the Australian environment. We have a lot of dirt roads, we have a lot of bad roads, and a lot of distances, that there's something unusual about our car buying habits that's even more extreme than, say, the United States, where obviously they have some large trucks that really dominate, but then it becomes a little bit more standardised, a bit more common to the rest of the world. So this is quite a unique market here, and that's one of the things that really has stayed consistent as there's been more SUVs and four-wheel drives available. They've really gone up in sales here. And then when you factor that in with that Australia and regional Australia, that's why tourists are coming here. And we are one of the last great wildernesses of the world, maybe not right here in Port Melbourne, but around Australia. And Australian Tourism Commission, all these people, that's the effort that they put in to see remote Australia, to go out into the bush. Now, everyone's definition of what the outback is, what the bush is, what remote is, it's kind of different. And for a lot of people, that can just be driving on a dirt road for the first time. But that demand for bespoke, personalised journeys that are a little bit different, that aren't just in a standard Corolla, that feel a little bit more personal, I think is something that we can hopefully really tap into. And one of the other transitions, I think, in transport is, and you see, half the things out here, the scooters, the bikes, all of those things are products and startups and services that are built for what would be defined as the last mile of transport. So you can take a train, you can take public transport, but there's some very sad statistic that only 7% of Melbourne really has walking access to any public transport. That's because obviously inner city is fine, but it's really spread out. Most of their services designed for inner city, electric bikes, electric scooters are fantastic, but they do work in urban areas really well. But as you get out of capital cities and even on the fringes of our big cities, the distances can be too great. And even if the distances aren't too great, maybe the infrastructure is wrong. I grew up in Bendigo, and in Bendigo, maybe an electric scooter would work, but half the time you're driving on roads that don't have a lot of shoulders or have a degraded shoulder, and the cars are driving at 8 kilometres an hour. So we really see Jaunt as something that we define as the last few miles of transport. And I think that in rural and regional Australia, it's not, just getting over there in a couple of Ks, it might be it's 20 minutes down the road kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be huge distances, but there's a huge appetite for wider transport. And so this is another bit of research we did with a friend who does some GIS modelling. I mean, it's pretty simple, but just thinking about, and again, I'm from Bendigo, so I was thinking about this, that Bendigo has a huge amount of tourists coming in via the train to go to the art gallery. And so Bendigo, it's an international art gallery, it's pretty great. People come by train, they go to the gallery, walk there. They kind of assume that there'll be more transport options than there is after that. And there's a lot of other great stuff to do, it's very hard to get there. And you could switch that to other cities in Australia. You could switch that to Byron Bay. You can kind of fly in and get an Uber to your house by the beach, but that's where you go and how you get around. A lot of other places work like that. But we kind of looked at, say, Victoria has a pretty good for Australia train network, and how far can you get walking around every train station? Let's say 2-5 kilometres, and you can kind of hardly see it. There's little pink dots there. That's the kind of ability that you could get taking a train and then walking from every train station. There's obviously other things you can do. But in contrast to the fact that if we could, say, provide electric vehicles, even if they're only short range, even if they've only got 200 k's of range, how much of Victoria could you cover from every passenger train station? And that's kind of the answer. And so suddenly you can sort of start to see that maybe the viability of putting electric vehicles, say, at train stations, country train stations, or short-term rental, could potentially change. And this is behaviour change, this is hard to do, this takes a long time. But the potential is there for exploring Australia for people who maybe aren't in the market to buy a new EV, or maybe don't have a car at all, which is definitely something that's on the increase. Allow them to get to huge parts of the country without, in a way that doesn't mean hiring a car at an airport for 5 days for the entirety of your trip, but hiring a car, renting a car when you need it for that 1 day or that 2 days. So hopefully there's something there. And I think looking at that, that sort of, and I guess we can't really characterise a whole culture by, 5 graphs, but that idea of individuality, that idea though of avoidance to change, so that uncertainty avoidance, that difference. And I assume most of you here who are at EV Expo have probably had conversations with someone in your life around the availability of charging infrastructure and the availability of EVs here in Australia. And there's a researcher at the University of Sydney, Jennifer Kent, and she's been looking into this, I guess I'm really simplifying the really great research she's done, but any excuse not to. It's really easy not to do something different, and that's a real barrier. It's a big barrier for why events like this are great, right? To come along and just drive around this track and suddenly realise it's an awesomely fun car, but that just in case, that, oh yeah, look, I definitely buy an EV, but there is that moment that, I do go camping once every 2 years and I need to drive 500 kilometres. Or what about that time I've got to do this thing? It's really easy to make excuses not to change. There's also cultural traditions around how we use cars and how we've been marketed to, around how we should use cars, those kind of expectations, status anxiety around vehicles, all those kind of things. And obviously outdated perception when you've got a market and an industry that's changing so rapidly, and infrastructure that's increasing so rapidly. What was true 2 years ago, 5 years ago is totally out of date now. So finding ways to break down those perceptions and getting people just in the driver's seat is something that we feel is really, really important while we're trying to do what we're doing. And I always found this, it's not Australian, but I think it's just a funny stat that kind of illustrates this, that was a study from 2 years ago, and Britain is well ahead of Australia in terms of EV adoption. But electricity and water don't mix, so surely, what? And fair enough, okay. And that's the challenge that we're facing. That's nearly half the population was thinking that. And where did that even come from, So, and maybe the question was asked in a weird way, I don't know. But it's still an interesting thing that it's really easy to kind of, new things are difficult, new things are hard, even though fundamentally these offer a better experience in so many other ways. But that misconception is, and that misunderstanding perhaps of EVs hasn't come from nowhere. And I think that while we've got things out there like Tesla's iPace and all these new major manufacturer vehicles have done a really good job recently of making EVs easy to understand as they should be, and easy to drive and feel like a phone to use. The challenge that we face and the opportunity we see is that DIY and more bespoke EV conversions have really been a lot less than that, and they've been very difficult things to perhaps understand for most people. That's a photo of my mum, but I put her next to one of these standard battery monitors that are used in even really high-end custom EVs. And the challenge is, and I mean me from a design point of view, there's too many fonts there and I don't like it, but more that you've got things communicated in amp hours and kilowatt hours and all these things. What is pressing these buttons? Why do you've got a volt button? What does my mum do with that? How do I get her to not be intimidated by trying something quite new and different if it's already unfamiliar and speaking a different language? And so there's a real challenge, not so much now that the technology has got to a point, the motors and the batteries, where we don't need to innovate in there, and we're not capable of that, but where we can innovate is the user experience in this, how we can bring something a lot nicer to that experience. Because obviously things like the iPace out there look amazing, you know, and feel like a normal car, and trying to make this really convenient, but we're dealing with that. And the thing about that is too that we're actually trying to remove a lot of the intimidation that was mechanical. So for most people who are used to 60 years of innovation in automotive, what do you do with the choke there? And what you can't see in that is there's 3 gear sticks in an alternator. What do they all do? And what do half those switches do, right? Half of those switches actually don't work. But those are the challenges. You want to have that balance of nostalgia, but then also usability and understanding of a modern audience who may only ever use this one time. How easy can we make it to get in? There's a start button. It makes us, even simple things like making a sound when it is on, or showing a clear light and indication. Often you get in a car and you're like, is it on? And that's already putting people's defences up. And so that's the kind of, that first point of driving, but we're dealing with the challenge of, this is a very too complex user journey map, but basically understanding how we're building a system that goes from someone booking on their phone to unlocking a vehicle, connecting to that car, how that's connected in display, how they're given directions on where to go, prescribed routes and those sort of things, how they lock it, how they do all those things. And a lot of car rental and car share services in Australia have done a lot of great work in that, whether you swipe or it's PIN code. But how do you make that really, really seamless and really beautiful? And I say that, I mean, I'm a really nerdy designer around these things, but it is important for people to feel comfortable and delighted